No changes to the playoff seeding. The Tush Push lives on. The NFL owners have been busy this week. What does all mean for your Miami Dolphins? We're exploring that here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, the author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and an NFL analyst for A to Z Sports. And I want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today on the show, NFL owners, they've voted on the Tush Push. They decided to throw the playoff reseeding in the trash can. NFL Olympics crossover happening in 2028. The NFL owners this week making several key decisions on the short-term and long-term outlook of the game of football. And we're going to be exploring how these things impact your Miami Dolphins. And the first one that I want to start with is a proposal from the Detroit Lions that got thrown in the trash today. And it was supposed to be a vote that would have determined how the playoff seeding worked. And I'm kind of glad that they threw this one away from a Dolphins perspective, selfishly, because had they made the change, you would have had to go all the way back to 2023 to find an example for the Dolphins from a playoff seeding perspective to be in a different situation and probably find themselves having ended their playoff drought. Like, it would not have taken very long. The proposal that was in place by Detroit, and there was kind of some back and forth about the formal terms of the proposal, but it ended up being just, we're going to seed off record and exclusively record. We're not going to reward you for being a division champion over having a better record. So for this past year, for example, it would have been Minnesota, lost week 18. They ended up being a wild card, had to go to the Rams, lost in the wild card round despite winning 14 games, didn't get a home playoff game. For the Dolphins specifically, you know that game they went and played in like one of the coldest games in NFL history, and people's helmets are breaking and people are getting frostbite in the stands, and there was a whole debate on whether or not they were going to reschedule or move the game because of the safety of the fans and the environment. And the Dolphins got absolutely shellacked and played an absolutely lifeless performance. I'm not going to sit here and say that that team was any better or worse than you thought it was. But Houston was the 4 seed at 10-7. Miami won 11 football games that year. So too did the Cleveland Browns. And the Cleveland Browns, from a conference win percentage, had the tiebreaker head-to-head over the Dolphins for the 5 seed. If they had had this rule in place that they threw in the trash can in 2023, the Dolphins would have gone to Cleveland to play a wild card game as compared to going to Kansas City. And then Houston would have been the 6 seed. Miami would have been the 5. Cleveland would have been the 4. So me, selfishly, as a Dolphins guy, to know that is the implication that you would have looked back at and said, man, we just missed that opportunity to end your playoff drought as compared to the one we got and go play Kansas City. Not mad that that change did not happen. Now, I will say this. I do think for the Dolphins and their playoff dry spell, being gentle with the choice of words here, getting a change in place probably would be a good thing to help expedite that process of getting the kind of matchup that you need to get over the hump there. That's the challenge, right? Is you coexisted with Tom Brady for 20 years, and now you have Josh Allen, who's arguably the best quarterback in football. And what that means for you is when you're making the playoffs and you're winning 9 or 10 or 11 games and you're not winning the division, what you end up doing is automatically being clinched into a road playoff win. And with names like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, the matchup difficulty in postseason play and environment, all that does is put that much more microscope on the Dolphins not finishing first place in their division. The last time they won the division, obviously, was 2008. The time before that they won the division was the year 2000. So again, since the start of the Brady era, you've won the division once. It was in 08, the year that Brady got hurt, and they still won 11 games and tied you for first place. You have very regularly been the second best team in this division this entire time. And there's been times that the Dolphins missed the playoffs, where if the NFL would have had 7 playoff teams instead of 6, the Dolphins would have had more trips to the postseason as well. And of course, that was a change that only recently happened. And that's part of the reason why, since they've expanded the playoff field, I do think eventually they will make some kind of changes to the seeding. So it's a storyline that I'm watching where hopefully the Dolphins win 11 games this year and manage to win the AFC East and get a 7 seed that comes limping to town, and they can win a playoff game, and everybody can act like that's going to fix all that ails the fan base, when in reality, the conversation will just shift to, well, you haven't been to the conference championship game since 1992, or I guess 1993, technically, 92 season, right? That'll be the next thing. And then it'll be, well, you haven't won the conference since 1985. Then you haven't won the Super Bowl since 1973, right? Like, until you do all of the things, the gripe that's going to exist is it's just going to shift down the alley a little bit, right? I feel very confident in saying that because I've seen firsthand some of the things that Dolphins fans get really frustrated about the football team over the past 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And that thing is adjusted, or that thing gets better. And lo and behold, we're still mad. And I get it's a lot of long-term frustration for a fan base that a lot of the people that are longer fans of the team were very accustomed to success and postseason success and legitimately competing for championships. So I get it, right? I think my perspective is a little different. And I was born in 89. So I was, 3 years old the last time the Dolphins played for a conference championship. And they lost in the conference championship game in that season. So it's like Bane, right? You think darkness is your ally. You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it. Right? Like, I haven't seen the light yet as far as Dolphins' success. I was born in the dark times. So I guess I just call myself the bane of Dolphins media podcast. I don't want to put myself in one of the buckets of content creators versus media. You could put me in whatever bucket you want. But I will certainly be watching playoff seeding storylines in years to come, because I do think that can be something that, when you consider a really long stretch of unfortunate timing for great quarterbacks to exist and live in your division, it's been a central theme of why you've been missing some of these opportunities and some of these favorable postseason matchups to maybe get that off your back. So the Tush Push lives. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Obviously, Dolphins not a big Tush Push team, as you'd expect, but perhaps there's some ways in which they could use that to their advantage. We're going to explore that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. As a small business owner, your work does not end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. And that's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post Your Job is LinkedIn's new feature that helps you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. You can add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. It's no wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Yeah, Dolphins not a tush push team. Well, we tried a QB sneak one time against Buffalo, and Tua got bent backwards, and that was the back injury that was a part of that whole exchange in that the last time the Dolphins beat Buffalo in week 3 at home in 22. I think there's some dabbling that this team can maybe do. I would love to see them continue to get creative with some of their skill players, but as far as just lining up, creating a rugby scrum, pushing the pile 3 yards, and having somebody that you get behind and nosedive them into the pile, and they're in a sea of bodies that you're carrying across the line to gain. I don't know that's ever going to be a part of this iteration of the Dolphins. I wouldn't say though that Aaron Brewer is prohibitive to successfully running short yardage sneaks. I know that's the big complaint. You speak about the complaints and gripes with the offensive line, and Aaron Brewer I thought was magnificent last season, but he's too small. Right? He got short yardage issues. He's too small. You can't play him. You need somebody else in there. I've heard it. Right? Which I personally could not physically disagree with more, but I know everybody has their own opinion. Because Cam Jurgens is not a big center in Philadelphia. Jason Kelce was not a big center, right? I mean, he was one of the smaller centers in the league. And part of what made him so special was the athleticism and the range and the ability to leverage and win with pad level. And I'm certainly not saying that Aaron Brewer is Kelce or maybe even Cam Jurgens, who's getting paid very handsomely. He's getting paid $17 million per season by the Eagles on a new contract extension they just agreed to with Cam Jurgens. But I do think it's worth noting that Philly had Mekhi Becton and Landon Dickerson playing on either side of a smaller center and still successfully ran some short yardage plays. I'm not saying run tush push, right? Because you're just not going to do that with Tua Tagovailoa. Now, I think there are a couple of players on the roster that maybe this could get a little interesting with. And even if it's not tush push, get under center and take snaps, because they tried that with Alec Ingold. They tried to do the short yardage thing with direct snaps to Durham Smythe over the last couple of years. So you've seen some players take direct snaps that are not the quarterback. That's Baltimore. Baltimore voted to preserve the tush push. They've used tight ends Charlie Kolar and Mark Andrews to run the tush push and direct snap to those guys in short yardage situations and push the pile behind them. I don't know how much I would love the idea of the Dolphins trying to implement that kind of school of thought for their short yardage issues, because, James Daniels and if you wanted to go heavy and embrace, 6 offensive linemen at times, which you'd like to see, maybe there be a little bit more embrace of the idea of we need to create displacement in between Savanaya and James Daniels and Austin Jackson and Patrick Paul, and you're double teaming with Aaron Brewer. He's not going to be a road grader in and of himself, but generally speaking, you're going to be looking at getting double teams at the point of attack anyway. You can go heavy with, I think, a 6th offensive lineman in short yardage. I'd like to see it at least tinker with it, right? Because I think the kinds of offensive linemen that you pursued are the kinds of displacement players while maintaining the athleticism that is so coveted to work within the scheme. Now, it has to work, but they say with who they went after this offseason. They said, our core principles are still our core principles, but we want to have a larger menu in which to operate. Now, I think some of your short yardage stuff between what you have with Ollie Gordon or maybe Alexander Madison to get under center and run traditional like lead and power and dive. You have a tight end in Jalen Conyers, who's an undrafted free agent who has experience collecting direct snaps from behind the center in shotgun. And you can do some zone ready type stuff out of that. That was kind of the idea of if you would bring in a Justin Fields or draft a Jalen Milroe and have your own package of plays for short yardage type situation. And I'm not saying that Jalen Conyers is your answer for your short yardage stuff either. I'm just putting all the ideas on the table to kind of say, hey, maybe there's some things that you could try new to try to aid and take advantage of your personnel changes, even if you're not going to be one of the teams that leans into, and from reports, it doesn't sound like the Dolphins voted to preserve. They were two votes short of passing this vote to get rid of the tush push. I would suspect you'll eventually get there where teams are going to get tired of this. I'm just frankly tired of talking about it. Like I would love to talk about not the merits of a short yardage play and instead talk about the rosters and not pretend like the Eagles Super Bowl run was defined by a short yardage rugby scrum, right? But as I look at what they have up front, down the road, if it stays, I think you needed a ball receiver to even have this on the table, because you're not going to put Tua Tagovailoa into the pile and try to push pile. You're just not going to do it. And you frankly should be fired if you try it. It's with his history, it's reckless, irresponsible, and he doesn't have the body type to do it anyway. Let's just be honest. So the tush push stands. There's no playoff reseeding. The league in those regards has avoided and pushed back on the idea of change. But there is some change coming in the form of an agreement that NFL players can participate in the Summer Olympics flag football. It's a big deal for the international outreach and exposure and footprint of the game. But I want to look at a couple of Dolphins players. Who's under contract for the Dolphins in 2028, first and foremost? And do they have anybody that would make sense to play on a flag football team that could be under contract and represent the Dolphins as a part of the national flag football team? We're going to explore that next. Stick with us. All right. NFL owners did the one thing they have done, and they did approve some changes to the onside kick procedure, in which the kicking team lines up a yard closer. You can now do it anytime that you're trailing. You don't have to wait until the fourth quarter to kick a onside kick, which I thought that was a very odd change that they made in the first place. But I get it with the kickoff rules and how that's different. You can't just catch people size surprise on an onside kick anymore because you're lining up, and the dynamics of it are different. But the owners did vote to pass a proposition that NFL players are now permitted to participate in the flag football competition during the Summer Olympics. It's a big win for football. So the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to look at who are the Dolphins players that are under contract in 2028 already. And there's 4 on offense. Tua Tagovailoa is currently scheduled to be under contract with the team in 2028. Ollie Gordon and Quinn Ewers, a couple of day 3 rookies who are 21 and 22 years old, respectively. So they would be, in theory, in 25, 26, 27, 28. They'd be in the physical primes of their careers. And you also have Jaylen Waddle, who, for my money, would probably be the most sensible name that the Dolphins have to play on the flag football Olympic team. Now, me personally, selfishly, I don't think I want to see any Dolphins players playing on the Olympic team, because I don't want somebody getting hurt playing for the Olympics, even if it's the flag version of the sport, because if you're going to get hurt in that environment, it means you probably planted wrong and something popped, and you're looking at potentially a serious injury, non-contact injury. That'd be a hard pill to swallow. Everybody points to Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill would be 35. He would be his last year under contract with Miami is in 2026. So maybe that's the right kind of type of player. I'm sure Tyreek would love the attention of playing on the national team and being in the headlines for another reason. Because I don't know that he'll be having highlight videos of him running on the track training, air quotes, training this offseason in 2028 like he does this offseason. But of the players that the Dolphins have under contract, for the 2028 season. And defensively, it's all your rookie picks, Grant, Phillips, Marshall, Trader, Biggers, and then Jalen Ramsey, who is not going to be representing the Dolphins in the Olympics in 2028 because he's not going to be representing the Dolphins in 2025, let alone 2028. So I think Jaylen Waddle is your most attractive current option of players under contract. Do the Dolphins do a contract extension with Achane that would put him under contract with the team through the 2028 season? He's currently under contract through 2026, not eligible to sign a contract extension until after this year upcoming. I saw that was a story that was written, which surprised me that in May, before the year he's even eligible to sign a contract extension, it's a talking point. But that, I think, would probably be the best name on the roster to be an impact player on the flag team, would be Achane, who is 24 years old. He would be 25, he'd be 27, 28. Still in the prime of his career. So Achane's probably my pick for if you could pick one player and you were going to turn the injuries off and guarantee nothing bad was going to happen, he'd be my pick. But the Dolphins do have at least one interesting player that is scheduled to be under contract with the team who could be a viable choice to be an impact player in Jaylen Waddle. So a lot of ball game left between now and then, but that's a big deal for the NFL and its global footprint and outreach and trying to maximize its fan base, which is a good thing for all of us, especially somebody like me who earns a living and takes care of his family by talking about the game of football. So the more people that love the game, the better it is. That's going to do it for us here today on Locked on Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys, as always, for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. I'll be back again tomorrow for more Miami Dolphins talk coming your way. Hope to see you then. Go Fins.